the MessianTics Podcast, a podcast about all things Messianic Judaism. Each episode, we will be sharing our opinions as we tackle some of the biggest issues in Messianic Judaism. Now, here's your hosts, Rabbis Eric, David, Jonathan, and Toby.
Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of MessianTics. I'm here with Rabbis Eric, David, and Toby. And today we have a probably a really different episode. We've never done one like this before, and I don't think we'll do one like it again when we're done. So most of you, of course, don't know. And I don't know how public your stuff is yet, but it'll release after anyway, right? Mm-hmm. Rabbi Toby and Rebbetzin Brook are going to be moving to live in North Georgia.
Yes.
And, of course, by the time this episode drops, this will already be public knowledge, and everyone will kind of know. But a lot of you who aren't maybe at our congregations who listen won't know this, but just due to that timing and the timing that I'll have begun some training for career outside of the synagogue, we've decided that this will be our final episode of MessianTics. And so today we just kind of wanted to reminisce and talk about some of the things that we've talked over, 3 years now? Have we been doing this?
Just about. I think it's over 2.5.
This August or September.
Like
I think August it would be 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the lessons we've even learned in that time, life experiences, and lessons and things that we hope everyone who has followed us through to the end will hopefully carry into their congregations and the movement itself as it continues to proliferate.
Yeah, so Rabbi Jonathan said that he was going to be getting some training in a job outside the synagogue. I wanted to make it clear that doesn't mean he's leaving the synagogue. He's just training to do something in addition to
Need some health insurance.
His work within the synagogue.
So we can have more kids. That's the big thing.
Yeah. So, but anyhow, it's been an interesting almost 3 years. Great relationship, great time doing this. I'm going to miss getting together on Wednesdays and hanging out, talking, and having lunch together.
Yeah, lunch is and lunch has been. We've had some different experiences with lunch.
Some good.
I don't think I've had a bad one.
I don't know. Oh, maybe entertaining.
The seafood place we went to a couple months ago was really good.
Oh, was that the fish place?
Excuse me.
The fried fish place?
The fried fish place was really good. And then the sushi place we went to was good. Those are really good. Those were memorable. And
I will say that was the lunch bit was sort of a big sell. I mean, not that I really hadn't a choice necessarily. I won't say I didn't have a choice. But whenever Rabbi Eric and David were talking about doing this, Rabbi Eric was like, "Yeah, we'll do. We'll get together. We'll record, and then probably go have lunch or something." I'm like, "Well, don't tempt me with a good time. I'm always here for lunch." So
it was. But it was. And because you guys know the area, and because you guys don't. You guys know where the good places are. I don't think there's ever been like a bad experience with food that I've had. But it's been fun, and the episodes will always be out there for people to go back and the seeds that were sown or cast or whatever. Those things don't always take root and show fruit right away. I'd like to think it's a time capsule of a lot of wisdom. I think questions that we had that maybe we didn't even, or problems that we didn't even know what the solutions were, and that we felt like we didn't have solutions about. It was a way to, I think, to vent some frustrations, which is not a bad thing. I know, for all we know, some people could have listened to episodes and be like, "Well, I just can't believe y'all say this. I can't believe y'all say that." And for that is, if you can't take criticism, then I don't know what you're doing, But I've enjoyed that, I think if we made some people go, you don't want to you're not out to offend anybody, but I think if some people are like, man, what the heck, you know, I think that's good. I think it's good, you know. But yeah, I've enjoyed the time and the conversations. Some have been honestly for me. Some are like, okay, I'm not quite as versed on this. So if you go back and listen to some episodes and I'm hardly talking, it's like, okay, I don't have much to say on that, you know. And,
sure, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, you do the best you can. And then there's some where you can just be like a fire hose on.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
I like the idea of looking at it like a time capsule.
Yeah.
Because as I look back, I mean, even from the first day we recorded, like for us, ministry hasn't stopped.
No.
And it just kept. I mean, I remember day one of this podcast. Y'all had come fresh on crisis mode.
Yeah, I don't remember that day actually.
I don't remember anything back then. Prior leaders in ministry of the musical variety, who were at y'all's congregation, who had abruptly left. And I just remember that was like fresh. And then, you know, there have been several other crises that each of us have brought. You know, that we would come here to record, and you know, we were dealing with either y'all were dealing with something or we were dealing with something, and then we have a season where none of us were dealing with really anything, which was nice. And
yeah,
but ministry, you know, none of it. All of that's preserved.
Yeah,
you know, here, and we really.
Yeah, it's interesting because when we look at it that way, for instance, Rabbi Jonathan, your little boy was just newly born when we began. Yeah, and like now he's running around doing raspberries all over the place.
Saying no to everything.
No. And Toby, you were really reasonably new to the area.
Yeah.
And, you know, your kids were smaller, and Rabbi David's daughter wasn't driving yet, and now she's driving. And you've gone through a building program of totally remodeling and rebuilding your building after the storm. We made it through a lot of things. So it's a lot of life that got lived in these 3 years that we've been together doing this.
Well, I think our hurricane damage was before the podcast started, but nonetheless, so this has been a fun opportunity. You know, there's always the old comment that floats around about the democratic republic that the U.S. is, and you know, that it's a grand experiment. Mm-hmm. And I think to some degree this kind of was. We kind of came into it. We intentionally picked the name for a reason. You know, it's the MessianTics Podcast, and our thought process was just to dialogue through some of the antics that we see and have experienced in the Messianic movement, some of the kind of not so great stuff, whatever that floats around. And I think we've left our mark in one way or another, whether positive or negative is up to you as a listener to determine. Yeah. We've definitely had some people that weren't so thrilled with some things that we've said, and people that were phenomenally thrilled with others, and such. But what I'd like to know, trying to think back, and I know there's a lot of episodes, but trying to think back over the course of the podcast as a whole, what's been your most memorable episode? Like, what episode or topic that we were discussing kind of really stood out and impacted you the most for whatever reason?
I don't remember when it was. God, you know, we always found a way to. I think I do remember. I don't want to go into names or anything, but it was an episode we recorded in response to something that was on Facebook about Gentiles, and I'm just going to be frank. We came in like locked and loaded because it just wasn't good. What had been put out there.
We were heated.
No, we weren't. but we kept our, you know, we weren't, you know, like just
quasi.
We didn't come in rabid, but
there you go. We didn't come in rabid about it, but I do remember coming in, and all four of us were hot, coming in hot, but it was a good conversation because I think it was fueled by our passion for the movement itself and for where we'd like to see it go, not because it's our opinion, but because it's what Scripture says. Yeah. And so I loved that episode. That was a fun day. And I so that's probably one when I think about content of what we talked about and how all four of us were like, we were just, we were on it on that one. I thought all of us said things that I thought were really powerful. And the other one is, I don't like to bring it up simply because Rabbi Eric wasn't there, but it was the time we recorded outside.
Oh, the cigars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had the cigars and,
Yeah. Then we got booted.
Wait, were the cigars in celebration of Rabbi Eric not?
No.
It was just we happened to be outside. We were like, let's record outside, not cigars.
And I don't remember what...
And the temperature was actually manageable.
It was a phenomenal day.
It was the perfect day to do that.
Yeah.
And it's like, you want to do that stuff all the time, but it's like, I wouldn't have appreciated that day if that happened all the time,
Right. Yeah, it was a good day of recording.
That's one of those, like, you don't realize you're in the good old days until they're gone.
Sure, yeah.
That's so true. You don't realize that, like, we were just out there having fun. We weren't thinking about, hey, let's really relish this moment, because now it's just a memory. Yeah. But
I guess in a way we are relishing it.
Yeah, we appreciated it, but it's like at the same time, sometimes when you're in the midst of things, you don't think about
how good they are.
How good they are. You don't think about how good they are, and you don't think about the finality of those things. Like when I was in college and I was running around with my friends, and I was at my first Messianic congregation, and I was running around with these guys, and we just made funny videos all the time. Right. And I went to college, and I worked a part-time job, and responsibility was there, but not really.
Just hooliganizing all the time.
Good, clean fun, but hooliganizing all the time. And I think that was one that I remember when I realized, when God told me, like, hey, it's not always going to be like this. Yeah. I'm like, what do you mean? It's not always going to be like this. The times they are changing, and that's just life, And I'm like, man, okay, well, that's not very nice. And God's like, I'm not nice, I'm good, and you need to grow up, And I think that's a lot of experiences. But that when I go back to that day, that was as far as the experience, as far as like I said, as far as content, it was that post Facebook one. But as far as the experience, it was just being outside and feeling like light and unburdened, and because you're with people you care about, and the cigars make it easy.
When I think about the course of episodes now, and I'll be honest, I'm kind of able to operate off a cheat sheet here because I handle all the posting and editing and everything, so I have the list of all the episodes we've ever done in front of me. But the two that really stand out to me, I mean, a lot of them, we had some really great conversations. We did an entire series on the kind of umbrella model organization versus denominational, and the pros and cons of each, and did a whole series on that I think was really beneficial and helped us kind of cathartically work through some concerns that we have. But the two episodes that really stand out to me the most as things that I really enjoyed the most was first and is we did an episode on pronomia and Christianity. Jonathan, you remember that?
I remember the heat we got for it.
And I enjoyed it because we didn't hold off, we didn't hold back punches. We said what we felt needed to be said, and I kind of like the I don't want to call it conflict, but the conflict aspect of we got some. It was the one episode that I can think of that we actually had another podcaster that responded to YouTube channel that responded to us, and it was funny to me because I thought he was going to be coming for me for something I said that was just blatantly bold.
Who did he go after?
I want to say it was something
he spent most
Jonathan
of his time
said.
on me on most stuff I was saying.
Rabbi Jonathan.
And didn't say anything at all about what I said. And I'm like, dude, mine was that was the moment. If you're going to gripe, that's where it's at, right?
Well, it's funny too because I remember I always, whenever people bring criticism my way, I always kind of go oh, like maybe I should go and like reflect and think. And so like I remember there were a lot of there were a lot of criticisms about that particular episode, and I remember thinking like, oh, did we say that? Did we really say that? And then went back and listened. I was like, oh no, we were very subjective about the things we said regarding because the whole episode was like, what is pronomian Christianity? We have no idea what it is.
Know at the time, I never heard
no, it was something that me and another rabbi teacher, another Messianic teacher, have been talking about, and we were just like, what is it? Like, is it going to grow into something that's good? Is it going to grow into something that's bad? Like, you know, what? And so, you know, a lot of our language and the things we said were, well, maybe it's this. It sounds like it could be that. You know, and so it was very subjective. So I was like, no, we didn't make any like hard accusations. So I'm not. At that point, I just was like, not worried about it. But I did go back and reflect and listen to it again. But it was fun. It was interesting. Like, I think that was kind of like the reality check for me. Like, oh, like there are people who are listening, and they may not always be.
Yes,
like our friends.
And I don't think I mentioned it a few moments ago, but the episode that I was referring to about the Facebook, that was all about Gentile participation in synagogues and how some it's not you know, again, not painting with a wire brush, but there are some pockets of Messianic Judaism where you have some Messianic Jews that don't want Gentiles to participate, and not only that, feel they should be barred from participation. And there was a Facebook post about that by some people we know, and I know I have no personal feelings against them. I just didn't, but I have a lot about what they said, and that's I just wanted to say that's what we were talking about that day when we were coming in hot anyway.
And then the other episode that really, and there's a bunch of them, but the other episode that really stands out to me, and more so for kind of the comedic side of it, was I forget, I want to say it was like February of 23, maybe somewhere around there, that we did an episode that was just a random conversation. I don't remember what got it started or what have you, but it was the episode where we talked about the unauthorized tambourines and shofars in the congregation.
Oh, yeah. Those were always fun.
We got heat for that too.
Yeah. No, actually, it may have even been later in the year, because I remember at Sukkot, we always at CMC, we always open our property up for people in our congregation to camp together at the synagogue on the weekend during Sukkot. And that particular year, it was shortly after that episode aired, that we had some people in our congregation that made signs for their tent that said no unauthorized shofars, no unauthorized tambourine, whatever. So they actually went and had these signs made to put outside their tent.
I do remember that now. Yeah. That's hilarious. I love it. Yeah, that was a fun episode.
So we caught flack for that, you said?
No. Oh, yeah. I mean, not like bad flack.
Yeah,
it wasn't like
people
anybody
were
came
like,
for us.
There were
some episodes that we caught legitimate flack, like organizationally, kind of stuff. But
I would think that, like David would say, not like I would be like, they probably get upset about something David or Eric would say. Not that I'm not outspoken and stuff. And yeah, I actually did have somebody say something. I'm not going to go into it, but I'll have to tell you guys after we press stop. Somebody said something to a person. So I know somebody, and we both know this.
I mean, you might as well just tell it on this one, because this is the final one. So it's kind of like, what are they going to do? Fire you? Like,
no, they can't fire me. But like somebody asked,
just leave names out as usual.
That's one thing we did learn is if you're going to say anything negative, don't use names.
And it wasn't even that we learned it. Like, we started the whole show out saying, praise,
no name dropping.
If you're praising names, if you're not, then no names. And we learned the hard way.
We did
an episode that we dropped a name and it came back to bite us.
It wasn't. It wasn't insulting. It wasn't like somebody was raging against me. They just asked, "Is he okay?"
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
And I'm like, probably because of my negative feelings about issues in the movement,
right?
Which the main one has always been one of the big ones has always been the Jew and Gentile thing. Right. So, and I because I can go hard on that.
Yeah, and they're very easy things to get passionate about.
Yeah, very easy. Because like I said, that actually was the one time I gave a message, and I got on that David gave me correction over when it was over. He was like, "I get it, man.
Yeah,
I get it. I see it." But you can't get up there and rage about it.
Right.
Like, I wasn't raging like, I was being really forceful, and and I did go too far. But
we had a conversation about, that we're going to have things that are going to rile us the wrong way.
Right.
But when we're teaching, when we're preaching, we can't preach from and minister from a place of anger. And he was like, "Oh, I didn't even realize I was," but you're 100% right.
Yeah, totally. And so, but this person asked if I was okay, and I never responded. I just was like, because the person doesn't know me.
Sure.
The person knows. We both know we have a mutual person in our life.
Yeah.
So my thing is like, I have nothing personal against you, dude, but I don't know you well enough to give you access to what's going on in my heart and soul. That makes for you, so you can know what makes me tick. Like, you haven't earned the right to know what makes me tick. And but yeah, I did have somebody say, "Is he okay?" I was like, I'm not always okay, actually.
We did have a couple people at synagogue who had pulled Rabs and I aside after the tambourine and shofar, and they were like, we just felt like it was very disrespectful, and I was like, I'm sorry.
So we're unauthorized tambourines.
Yeah. I was like, I'm
my
sorry.
bad if this comes back at you again.
We were not trying to be, dirtbags about it, but we're just
really good at it.
Some of us it comes more naturally than others, but we were just remarking on, how when you're directing the congregation in a certain way up front, there are certain things that are distracting, and that definitely it tends to be one of them.
Yeah, but it is funny though. But what I was starting to say though was that Rabbi Eric and Rabbi David have been doing this longer, and because they've been doing this longer and they have more experience, they can speak a little more forcefully and confidently towards things. But the person that ends up getting in trouble is Jonathan.
Well, David,
but with the show, with the show. I mean, David in general, I would agree. Because David raised his hand.
It was funny though whenever there are comments like about stuff I was saying, and I was like, and I'm like, man, I've never met this person in my life.
Yeah. So, but those were I wish that. There were times when I wish that we weren't connected to. I don't want to say I wish we weren't connected to ministries, because that's what brought us together. But sometimes, if we had a situation where we could have went a little more rogue, this show would have been so fiery.
Well, let me tell you, on line with that, with Rabbi Toby, we kind of got away from it just over time because it wasn't going to be anything we could do anything with. But we had initially, probably after the first year, we were talking, just entertaining the idea of having a paywall for the behind the scenes episodes, just coming in and just hitting record while we do our pre-show talks, and just hey, if you pay $10 a month, you can have access to 4 of these a month that one drops every week, and because some of those conversations were.
That's where the real fun came in.
That's usually the stuff that was before we hit record.
But in fairness, that's also where a number of the episodes came from.
Oh, absolutely.
Our pre-recording convos.
Right.
Just wait. You know what? Let's go ahead and hit record.
We had to say, let's stop and hit record, and let's tailor the conversation to be
to a general audience.
Right.
So I don't have a particular episode that I look back and say, oh, that was my favorite, or that was the most meaningful. I wanted to say, as we're wrapping up, not this episode, but we're wrapping up the podcast, that if we can't, if we don't do anything else through these podcasts, if we don't accomplish anything else, if we can get people to think about the Messianic movement in the way we think about the unity of God. In other words, Yeshua said, "May they be one as I and the Father are one."
Right.
And that was a bold statement. And he wasn't just talking to Jewish people. Mm-hmm. He was talking to all believers in the future, saying, "You guys be one." Now, we don't understand how exactly God is one. People want to argue about the nature of God and how he exists. And we just know there's one God. But we also know there's the Father, there's the Holy Spirit, and there's the Son. How that all works is outside of our understanding, but we know it's one, and it's supposed to be one, and that you can't divide it into any more than one.
Right.
And if anybody, I don't know, if we don't teach anything else, if nothing else comes out of this, if we can get the body of believers to understand that Jew and Gentile are one in Messiah, and I don't know exactly how spiritually that happens, how a Gentile can unify with the Jew, how all that can be, but it has to be, or else we'll cease to be what we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And understanding that we can have unity with distinctions, unity with roles, unity, but it has to be unity. And we have got to stop this rebuilding the wall between Jew and Gentile in our congregations, or we will never accomplish what we're supposed to. When I was in Ukraine the other day, we were talking, and they were saying that, and the truth is that there are 1 million some Jewish believers in churches in the United States. There's 30 or 40,000 Jews in Messianic synagogues. So more Jews are outside of Messianic Judaism than inside of Messianic Judaism.
Yes.
We also know that most Jewish believers are led to Messiah by Gentiles.
The church.
By people in the church.
Almost like, the Bible said something there.
Yeah, but if we want Jewish people in our synagogues and not in churches, and I'm not saying
we're not advocating
not that there's
stealing.
anything wrong with that, as a TV show would say. But if we want Jewish people in our synagogues, and we understand that most Jewish people are led to Messiah by Gentiles, then we need to accept and make Gentiles feel part of our synagogue, or else they'll go to a church and invite their Jewish friends to churches where they'll separate from their Judaism and assimilate into a Christian worldview rather than a Judaic biblical worldview. And unless we understand that unity and that Yeshua's prayer, maybe they be one, is more significant than just let's all just get along. But let us actually be one. And if nothing else comes out of this podcast, then 4 of us, 2 Jews, 2 non-Jews, old, young, and in between, all agreeing and seeing a vision for a body of believers that is a unified Jew and non-Jew, working together, living together, focused on following and observing the Torah, but with distinction, roles, and without confusion about who's who and what.
Right. I think that if I could sum up what we've done the past almost 3 years, is we've said the quiet part out loud. We continually said the quiet parts out loud. The things that, especially towards the issues and the struggles and the problems confronting the movement, we've said a lot of good about the movement, but I think it's important that nobody was saying this stuff. I have never, before I participated in this, when this experiment started, like David called it, this grand experiment, I've never heard anybody talk about the things that we all 4 spent the past few years talking about. And I'm just to give a list, the Jew and Gentile thing, the whole thing about most Jewish believers being in church. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I will say, to add to that, the difference is there were people talking about the Jew-Gentile thing. The difference between, and I hate to say us and them, but the difference between us and them was that most of those groups just became schismatic and left and did their own thing and became whatever they are today. Whereas we have the whole time been advocating for sticking with the movement, sticking with the organizations, and trying to reform and change things that can be redeemed and made good within the movement, with respect for the movement, with respect for the leaders in the movement. And that's the difference.
And because we've said these things and we've broadcasted these things, they're there. So what I'm saying is, now when the conversation inevitably continues, nothing ends. These are the things of God, but we can point to that and say, "Hey, we've been talking about this. Okay, this has been going on. It's not like nobody's been saying this stuff, and it's not like it's not out there for you to hear." And some people won't listen to it, but some people will, and they're going to start. And that's what I hope we start more conversations. more conversations, because I've never heard, like you said, people have been talking about it, but not in this nuanced way.
Yeah.
With two Jews and two non-Jews, four rabbis, and
from the inside.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that this conversation tends to happen on the outside, pointing fingers at the
which
movement.
is what I was trying to get at.
But we were talking about it from the inside, living out the example of Jew and Gentile together.
And we have been, and that does make some people bristle. We know that there are some, again, I'm being very careful, there are a few Messianic Jewish rabbis out there that probably bristles against the idea of a Messianic Gentile rabbi. Like, no, you're not a rabbi because you're not Jewish. But we've been doing that. We've been doing that, and we've been talking about it, and we've been unashamed about it, and that has to be dealt with now.
Right, and understanding and dealing with the reality.
Yeah, the reality has to be dealt with.
Neither you nor Rabbi Jonathan are confused about who and what you are because you're serving as a rabbi within a congregation.
Right.
That doing those things, that wearing kippot or wearing talitot or doing liturgy or any of the things that are part of reading from the Torah scroll or any of those things, it didn't confuse you of who you are.
No.
You didn't become like, oh, I must be Jewish. There must be a drop of blood somewhere. That
must be related to Ruth.
Yeah, if we look far enough back, we can find that one drop of blood that dripped off of somebody and landed on somebody like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And suddenly I had the superpower of Jewishness that entered into my body. It doesn't have to be that way, and we don't have to have a fear that that's going to happen because we treat people as equals.
And let's be honest, the only true superpower that we have as Jewish people is the uncanny ability to somehow make everyone else in the world hate us. So
but again, it's just been great hearing all these conversations, which we've had so many I don't even remember, but they happened. And again, going back to the time capsule thing, but it's there. There's lots of great conversations, and the conversations will continue. And we didn't get all of our questions answered. The questions that we posed, I think a lot of it, as much as we enjoyed talking to each other, a lot of the show was about presenting questions, which is very Jewish,
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think my favorite episode, it'd be hard to boil it down to one, but it was when we did the series on denomination versus fellowship model.
I remember that.
Just because I think for any movement, any time you get human beings together and try to organize an idea and trying to put it into action, you have to think about who are we going to be and how are we going to be structured, how are we going to be governed. This is literally the first conversation the believers have in Acts, like outside of bringing the gospel to the temple during Shavuot. It's like the first crisis is we need to organize some leadership to make sure that things that need to get done are getting done. And so I think that's my favorite series, or part of all that we've done, just because that's really, by the time you wrap all this up, it is about us asking questions, and it is about us posing challenges to ourselves and the rest of the movement, for whoever listens to this in 6 years and goes, oh yeah, wow, we should vote for this to happen. We should vote for a ecclesiological body of authority that governs the Messianic movement as a whole, and provides a firm foundation for us to look to when there are challenges. And they don't have to be things that are like, what does this passage of Scripture mean? I mean, there's a lot of life that happens that Scripture really doesn't give a clear answer to, and that's why you have to have those people there who are, who they themselves have a firm foundation in Scripture and the Holy Spirit, who can give those answers.
Yeah, and some people who listen to our podcast at least came away or challenged me with, are you mad at the organizations that you're part of? You seem to be complaining about this. Is that because you're angry at, or you don't want to be? And the truth is, we're talking about the things we're talking about because we love the Messianic Jewish movement. We love the organizations we're part of. We love the leaders of those organizations. We want to be, but when you love something, you want it to be the best that it possibly can be.
And you don't want short-term success.
Right.
Like we don't want just this year's board members to do well.
Yeah.
We want the board members in 30 years.
Right. And we want to see it get strengthened, and we want to see it get better. And so it's kind of like with a football team. If you have a football team and they do really good at certain things, but their special teams are bad, it's okay to talk about the special teams needing to get better so that they can get better. That doesn't diminish the value of the quarterback or the line or the defense.
Yeah.
You're just talking about the parts that could be better so that the whole team is better. And so there are times where we were pretty dogmatic and upfront about things we're dissatisfied within the movement, but we're within the movement and we want it to be better, and we're saying those things and said those things because we love the movement and we want to see it become this powerful end-time revival of Jew and non-Jew, one in Messiah, that this one new man becomes what it in our lifetime what it should be.
Yeah.
And so we love the IMCS, we love the Union, the UMJC. We love several of the other groups that we've talked about that are part of the greater Messianic movement. We're glad we're a part of it, and we want to continue to be a part of both organizations and do what we can for the movement. But these issues that we've talked about are things that are seen within the movement that we would just like to see us get better at. And there's other things we talked about that are really good in the movement that we've spoken of very highly, and we were encouraging and want people to go to conferences and be part of these things.
And the truth is, you're never going to know where you're successful and where you're failing unless you take the time to evaluate. This has really been a part of that for us, for our place in the Messianic movement, is just an evaluation of what the movement is doing, what we're doing that's working, what we're doing that's not working, how we can improve things, because ultimately the goal of any organization, any entity should always be to get better, to improve. And we're not pretending like, and we've said this time and time again in numerous episodes, we are not pretending like we have all the answers. We're just willing to pose the questions when they come up. And we're now, by the time this episode airs, which is the final episode of the MessianTics Podcast, there will be 136 total episodes over the course of about 3 years. The first season was 50 episodes. The second was 46. This season, season 3 will be 40 episodes when this episode drops, and that's the finality of it. And over the course of 136 episodes, there's never been a point in time where any of the four of us have said in any episode, we're ready to throw in the towel and walk away. Right? Instead, what we've said is we want to do everything we can to see this movement become everything God desires for it to be. And every question we pose, every discussion we've had, every issue we've brought up, every positive that we've shared has been from that perspective. What can we do as a movement to improve and better the movement and better our position in who we're supposed to be for God's kingdom? And I think it's important to have those conversations. I wish that organizationally we'd have more of those, on both sides of the line and what have you, or even get together and go, hey, where are we falling short? What can we do? How can we improve unity? How can we improve this? And that's really been our heart behind this. Like Rabbi Eric said, unity. Our heart behind this has always been to help foster, develop, and further unity in the movement and hopefully in the greater body.
Yeah. Again, it was just excuse me. And those 136 episodes will will be out there for all time. Again, for people to go back to, or for people to discover. I mean, I've discovered plenty of podcasts in my travels just that were old. And of course, because this is about the things of God and this is about the Messianic movement, that it's timeless. And just to echo what Rabbi Eric said, it's the criticisms is because we love what we're criticizing, and criticism's good, and if done with the right heart, and it is with the right heart, because I know that all four of us love the movement, and while we don't know the ins and outs of every single problem, we do have a bead on some things that are absolutely hindering the movement. I know, look, I'm no Jonathan Burness, but it was Jonathan Burness that, in my opinion, gave the strongest criticism of the Messianic movement at the leadership summit at one of the MJAA YMJ leadership summits, is when he said, it's the first thing he said in his leadership class. He goes, the first thing you need to understand is that right now the Messianic movement is not moving. And I'm like, man, he just said the thing. And so I'm like, okay, I'm only saying what one of my elder statesmen that I look up to said, and that's honestly, for me, it's that led, for me, my part in the podcast has been fueled honestly by that moment. Yeah. Because I realize, I'm like, I believe that, but I'm hearing this elder statesman say it.
Yeah. Your thinking and your discussion was, why did he say that? What are the and that's largely been what we've tried to do, is that phrase, why are we not moving? Because that's if you're on a boat and it stops moving, why aren't we moving? The whole point of a boat is to go forward, and it's like, okay, well, either the motor's broken, or if we're a sailboat, there's no wind, or
to put it into a picture, if the movement isn't moving, then the oxen need to get their heads in the yoke and start pulling it. And the purpose of this podcast was the four of us stuck our heads in one side of the yoke and said, stick your head in the other side and walk with us. Let's pull together to get there. We don't have all the answers, but if we work together, we can get this thing moving, and we can see the revival that we talk about actually take place in the power of God's Ruach and Spirit, and see the end time move of God, where the Jews say, Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would love to say that we've never had any complications or issues or relational problems or whatever since this podcast began, but it would be a lie. We've definitely had some conflict, if you would, some people that weren't happy with some things that we've said, which I think in some way we kind of anticipated. We knew would occur and would happen, but we've had a lot of people, and I mean a lot of people, who have commented to us, who have made comments online about how much of a blessing the MessianTics podcast has been to them, helped them better understand things. We've got a guy at CMC that's reasonably new to Messianic Judaism, been with us at the synagogue there for a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And he's listened to every single episode. He's commented on most of them, but he's listened to every single episode, and he's told us that it's helped him kind of learn about Messianic Judaism a lot, because it wasn't just, I'm in the synagogue and I'm picking up what I can as things are going on, but he was able to hear a lot of it and really take the time to be able to kind of evaluate where he is now in his walk with the Lord, in comparison with, when he's been in different churches or what have you over the years, and see how far he's come and where he's going and what have you. But I would like to think that we've been far more of a blessing to people than we have a thorn inside.
I would say.
Yeah, there's definitely been some that weren't thrilled with us, or some of what we've said, and it's fair. I'll take it. It is what it is. But But at the same time, our heart, our goal was not to offend anybody, but rather to help spawn or spur or push forward some sort of a movement to begin again in the Messianic movement.
And a conversation to bring that about.
Yeah, because again, we consider ourselves part of the criticism. Like we're a part of. Yeah. If we were at the Thanksgiving dinner explaining why the food ended up so bad, and we were in the kitchen cooking. So
I'm a fervent believer that you can't be a part of a solution from the outside, right? And we're part of we consider ourselves as part of the problems that we're talking about.
Yeah, we own
and the
all of the
successes that we're talking about. And we're not on the outside pointing fingers at the inside. We're on the inside pointing fingers at the situations that exist on the inside that need to be addressed, that need to be changed in order for us to be, as a movement, what God intends for us to be.
Yeah, and I think, like, I'll just take one. I'll reach into the MessianTics bucket and I'll pull one subject out that I've always enjoyed talking about. And this will probably make some people bristle, but the issue of Messianic Jewish conversion. Like, that's something that we've all... And here's the thing. Here's my thing. Look, all things are permissible, not all things are beneficial. There is a rabbinic council, a Messianic rabbinic council that is doing that. Well, my thing is that I think it's important for, again, another important thing about this podcast that we've done is we have been a voice about our perspective of that, according to the scripture. And I think that's been important. I'm like, listen, you can't just do that stuff and not expect that to be addressed or there to be a conversation. It's important. It's a conversation that's very important. You don't get to just do something like that and not eventually be like, have someone go, hold on, wait a minute, can we just stop for a second, and talk about how that can be a problem, And I think we're one of the few that aren't just talking about it, but we're putting it out there. We're putting the question out there, like saying, okay. And the people that are, by the way, I just want to say, the people that are behind that, I know them. Some of them are my friends, and I love them very much. But I can't get on board with that. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad I had an opportunity to say that when you criticize someone, it doesn't mean you don't like them. There are people that I greatly respect that are doing that stuff. But I just think and you have to understand, it kind of goes back to the New Testament. The church's understanding of Yeshua when he would roast the Pharisees is that, those Pharisees are so awful, and Yeshua hated them. I said, no, he didn't. They were his brothers. They were in his community. You were watching a family argument. He was begging them to see what was right in front of them. He goes, I love you, and the thing you love most is standing right in front of you. And he doesn't say, he says, how are you going to escape condemnation? He wasn't condemning them. He was saying, how are you guys going to get it if you keep this up? If you keep this up, right? So you've been watching with the MessianTics podcast. This is part of the family argument, And we have some people on one side of our table or sitting next to us and stuff, and they think one thing, but it's all done in love, even though it's at times with some frustration. But the conversion conversation would be an example of that, because I'm like, I've never heard a podcast out there where Messianic rabbis were saying, well, let's talk about the other side of that issue and how that could be a problem. And that's what I loved about doing that, because it wasn't just hanging out with you guys and having fun. It really was saying, hey, we really are putting some important challenges and questions out there.
This is likely our last episode, I don't know if there will be any future veneration of this or what have you, but nonetheless, I kind of want to jump into the ball pit of controversy one final time, and this doesn't have to be a long conversation per se.
Well, like I said with Rabbi Toby, what are they going to do? Fire you?
Right. But I do.
Cancel your podcast.
This is something we had a conversation about this shortly after October 7th, 23, and it's a conversation that has come up in my interactions with fellow Messianic believers around my age range and such over the past year and a half, 2 years, and so on. But I think in light of, and I don't want to go into details, but in light of recent events that have created some degree of explosion within the Messianic movement. I think this is a valid reality, and as we talked about earlier, our hope and desire for this podcast has always been to foster unity, not to create division. And I think that this is something that the Messianic Jewish movement needs more than anything right now is unity. October 7th, 2023 should have been a catalyst for unity in the movement. Instead, it to some degree kind of became a catalyst for competition. Who can raise the most money? Who can do this? Who can do that? Whatever. And when we look at the rest of the Jewish world, with the exception of some weird Hasidic groups that are anti-Zionist because it's not a theocracy and what have you. When we look at the rest of the Jewish world, October 7th brought unity, right? The rest of the Jewish world, well, I said with the exception of some Hasidic group, offshoot of Hasidic group that is a little weird about it. But also I guess there were definitely some like in the Reform movement, Reconstructionist movement that were a little, that have been very problematic about it. But in general, the Jewish world saw more unity than division because of October 7th. And the reality is, just last week, there were 2 young Messianic Jewish Israelis who were murdered. And I say just last week. This episode is going to air on June 27th, I believe it is. And so the shooting in D.C., June 27th. The shooting in D.C. took place. Do you remember the exact date? It was
May, like not quite. It was just before May 20th, I believe.
And so in that shooting, it was 2 embassy staffers, Israel embassy staffers in D.C. that were shot and killed by a Hamas supporter, Palestinian supporter, whatever, Gazan supporter, however you want to word it, were shot and murdered in cold blood as they were leaving the Capitol Jewish Museum. And what I saw after the fact kind of intrigued me, because every Messianic group wanted to claim them as these are Messianic Jews, these are our people, this is... And at the same time, the Jewish world, to some degree, wanted to claim them because it was 2 Israelis that got shot for because they were Zionists.
Right.
But then at the same time, the Jewish world wanted to revolt against them because they believed in Yeshua. Right. Because they were Messianic. And what I noticed in that, what really stood out to me, is something that I've said for a long time at CMC, and I think it's really an important reality to us at CMC because we're the only Jewish house of worship in Baldwin County. If somebody decided that they wanted to attack a Jewish house of worship in Baldwin County, we're the only option. We catch all of it. And an anti-Semite, a terrorist, whoever, they don't care if you're Messianic. They don't even know what the difference is between a Messianic Jew and an Orthodox Jew. They just know a Jew is a Jew, a synagogue is a synagogue. We have Messianic Judaism. We catch all of the same heat, all of the same flack from the anti-Semitic world that all of the rest of Judaism does. The difference is the rest of Judaism doesn't want to accept us any more than the anti-Semites do. And they don't want to accept us because of Yeshua, whereas the anti-Semites don't want to accept us because of Judaism. But the reality is that October 7th should have been a moment in time in which the Messianic Jewish movement as a whole, organizational divides be gone. The Messianic Jewish movement as a whole should have stood on that day and went, we need unity. We need to be together, support each other. That doesn't mean that the organizations have to, homogeneously blend together or whatever. But we need to support each other, work together, build up together, etc. Instead, we've really kind of been more divided. And I can't go into a lot of details, but it has been very evident to the 4 of us at this table that there has been far more division in the Messianic Jewish movement since October 7th than there has anything that remotely resembles unity. And here we are. We have 2 Messianic Jews. Now, there were Messianic Jews that have died in combat in Israel and Gaza since October 7th. But here we had the 2 Jews, 2 Israelis that were killed on U.S. soil because they were Jews in the midst of this conflict. And we, as a movement should have been a second wake-up call. October 7th should have been first. And then this particular incident should have been a second wake-up call. And as a whole, the movement should have went, yes, these are our people. We need to be each other's people. We need to be united. We need to stop the division and the hatred and the anger against each other and so on and so forth. And so, like I said, we can talk on this for a minute, but I wanted to...
And I really think it needs to go further than that. And that is this, that if one of our synagogues was to be attacked, God forbid, the attacker would not shoot the Gentiles. Mm-hmm. That were there.
Yep. Yeah.
They would, without discrimination.
Right.
You're in a synagogue, you're getting hit.
You're in a synagogue, you're assumed to be part of that synagogue, and nobody's checking to see if you had a Brit Milah or not before they shoot you. And for us, that should be a wake-up call, not only of unity among the Messianic movements, the different organizations, but unity to the understanding that those outside that want to destroy us, those outside that want to see us dead, those outside that come against us because of our faith, because of our lifestyle, all of those things, they're not discriminating between the Jews and the non-Jews in our synagogues. And they're doing a better job of seeing the unity of the Messianic community than some of us within the community itself who differentiate so strongly between those who attend our synagogue, whether they're Jewish or non-Jewish. So I think this conversation of unity, and again, you're talking about throwing one last grenade into the mix, is that we need to stop looking at our community as if we're two separate groups of people worshiping in the same synagogue, because those that hate us don't look at it that way.
They see one. They actually see, like you said, they see the unity better than
we do.
That was really powerful, yeah.
And so,
and going forward,
we can do better.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can do. We have to, because the truth is, God doesn't need us. Like Gamliel tells the public when they're trying to try Peter and the apostles, it's like, if it's of God, it will last. And so it's up to us to do the good work, because the truth is, like with Israel, as is the pattern with God and his people, if we don't do the work, God will take it from us. And God will give it to maybe someone down the road. Maybe we'll have to wait another 300 years for a new Messianic movement. Maybe we'll have to, maybe it'll be our, fifth great-grandchild who has to then come and redo everything. But that's a reality. You can read about that in the Bible. Twice that happens. And so do we want to continue the pattern, or do we want to be the people of repentance that God calls us to be?
Yeah, I have so enjoyed doing these podcasts. I've enjoyed our time together. I've enjoyed the comments people have made. They go to a conference and people talk about the MessianTics podcast, all of that. I'm going to miss doing this.
Yeah.
And it's been a real part of
it's been a big part of our week.
Yeah, who we are, and it's been an honor to be sitting around the table with you guys each week.
Yeah, thanks to all three of you guys for just letting me be part of the team, letting me be part of a group, and thank you for people who are listening. I know how valuable time is, and if you're using that time to listen to these four crazy guys, I just want you to know, we appreciate that, and we hope that time's redeemed time, that has been good for you, and we just appreciate that.
So until shalom and blessings.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the MessianTics Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you can be notified every time we drop a new episode. And be sure to follow and interact with us on social media at MessianTics Podcast.